Did you know ASBN, America's Small Business Network, is now available on your TV? That's right. ASBN is now streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire Stick, and available for download in the App Store. Scan the QR code to download the ASBN app today. Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Shyann Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Shyann Malone. You're watching another edition of The Small Business Show, exclusively on ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire Stick, and Apple TV. Today we are diving into a topic that is crucial for entrepreneurs and small business owners alike: employee engagement in the workplace. We're joined by best-selling author, executive coach, and keynote speaker Chester Elton. He's helped several organizations build an all-in culture. Chester, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So I want to hear more about this all-in culture. So describe that for me a little bit more.
Yeah. So you say, how do we get to be all in? You know, we've all had jobs where we wake up in the morning and we go, I just want to hit the snooze button and get a few a little more sleep, right? You're bracing yourself for the rope-a-dope, day. And we've had jobs where we wake up and throw our fist in the air and say, hey, I get to go to work today,
Mm-hmm.
So the all-in culture, by definition, we say is a place where people believe what they do matters and they make a difference. And I always like to add, and when I make a difference, somebody notices it and celebrates it. So this is what's really interesting. We've got a database of over 1 million engagement surveys, countless interviews and case studies. The common thread that we found in all these all-in cultures, the cultures that are above and beyond the norm, extraordinary, exceptional teams and leaders, you'll find this really interesting. The common thread was gratitude. Isn't that interesting?
Very much
that
so.
I believe what I did. Yeah, I believe what I did mattered. I make a difference, and somebody noticed it and celebrated it. Simple little things that great leaders do that make a huge difference. Isn't that fascinating?
It is. So speaking of leadership, how do they fit into this all-in culture?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, you need to lead by example. What we love when we teach leaders is, look, how do you engage, enable, and energize your people? So engagement is, I give my discretionary effort, and a lot of work has been done on that, and say, okay, we need engaged employees. Yes, you do. Check that box. How you get there is you enable them. In other words, do I have the training and the tools to deliver on the promise? And then thirdly is that energize. And this is where, again, it comes back to you're leading humans, right? You're leading people. And that is, do I have an emotional engagement to the work? Like, do I really believe that what I do is going to make a difference? And I am aligned, right? What's important to me is important to my company. It ripples through my family, my community, and so on. I'm making a difference. That's an all-in culture. Does that make sense?
It does. What about, when you have the upper level executives or the marketing gurus, right? I feel like they have one expectation that's over here. And often you have the boots on the ground, the reps that are out there doing the work, and there's a huge disconnect. Is there a way to get them on the same track using this all-in culture?
Yes. And this is where the leader is so important, because the leader has to bridge that gap. And it's his or her job, right, to go to marketing and say, I get what you want. Here's what we can deliver. And we can deliver it, really, really well. You've got to give us this, this, and this to make it happen. That's leadership. Now, here's what's really important with leaders is often you forget to put your oxygen mask on first. I love that expression. You travel, I travel. Make sure you're engaging and enabling and energizing yourself, because it's really easy. You can't give what you don't have. So often leaders feel like they have to be perfect. They have to have all the answers. It's really interesting, Shyann. We've looked at this and said, what are the biggest changes over the last 5 years in particular in the characteristics of great leaders? If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd say, look, visionary, great communicator, great motivator, team, even maybe a collaborator. It's really interesting now that what employees are looking for is not just that. They're looking for empathy. They're looking for the empathetic leader. And that's a huge shift, that leaders need to be a little more vulnerable, a little more authentic, a little more collaborative. You'll find this fascinating. I was with a big group of executives and said, what do you expect from your leaders? And the answer that really stuck with me is when they said, I don't want my leader just to make me a better worker bee. I want my leader to help me become a better person. Now think about that for a minute. I don't want to just have a job that helps me sell more widgets or, create more customers or whatever. I want a job that's going to help me become a better person. And if you don't have an empathetic leader that understands their team, that understands their characteristics, their motivators, their history, where did you come from? Why are you here? Where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? You're not going to have as much success. So again, bridging that gap is really important. Taking care of yourself as a leader is really important. And making sure that you've got that dose of empathy, that people feel safe to talk to you about things, not just work, life. Because if the pandemic taught us anything, there's no separation between work and family. And those are the all-in cultures that really thrive.
Great point. So you raise up, the factor that we dealt with the pandemic. Lots of people, went home to work and working remotely. Some of them still are. Some of them are hybrid jobs out there as well. So how do you make that work with the all-in culture when you have people who are some in office, some at home, some hybrid, a little bit of both?
Yeah. So I wish I had the perfect answer for you because if I did, we'd all be happier. The answer really is it depends. And I know that's a hedging my bet. The thing is there are employees now that have become so addicted and developed a great lifestyle around completely remote work. And in some in some job characteristics and definitions, it works really well. Research people, IT people. What I think we're finding more and more, though, is when it comes to the end of the day, we are social animals. And we want to be together. And so you're going to see, my opinion, we're going to see more and more a migration of work. Now, some companies are doing it gradually and saying, look, you come in twice a week, 3 times a week. I think people like having that flexibility, particularly, and this won't shock you, on Mondays and Fridays, right?
Oh, so yeah.
Those are the really good days to work remotely, right? I think that we're going to find that the hybrid work is going to work, and it's going to work really well. In healthcare, they figured it out a long time ago, where you could have 4 days of 10-hour shifts, and then you got 3 days off. Right now, those 4 10-hour days are pretty rough. The 3 days off, though, that you can spend with time with family and hobbies and so on. So we're going to see more and more of that. And I think there are going to be companies where, look, you have to show up. If you've got a retail store, you have to show. That's not a hybrid job, right? Research, IT, things like that. And I think we'll just figure it out. And that's your job as a leader, to figure out that happy medium. Who really needs to be here? Who needs to be here sometimes? And who can work from Romania if we need him to,
there you go. Okay. Well, Chester, can you give us an example of an organization using this all-in culture method and their results even?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. One of my favorite case studies, and we've worked with them for a long time, is Texas Roadhouse Restaurants.
Okay.
And I think it's the perfect example for you, because when the pandemic hit, as you know, restaurants shut down. And you could, if you were lucky, you could get takeout. Well, Texas Roadhouse, have you ever been to a Texas Roadhouse restaurant, by the way?
I have.
Isn't it fun?
It is. The peanuts on the ground, the yeast rolls, the cinnamon butter. Yes.
Absolutely.
One of my first formal date with my now husband was at a Texas Roadhouse. So
great memories. Good for you. Yeah. And I'm telling you, those rolls, those are addictive. Be careful.
I know.
So the point is Ken Taylor, the founder at the time, he hated takeaway. Because he said, look, we're all about the experience. We're a part. You can't put a party in a bag. Well, the pandemic hits, and all of a sudden he rallies and says, well, we got to figure out how to make the takeaway experience extraordinary. So they called it service with a heart, 6 feet apart. And he masked up everybody, and they got it working, and they did like drive through, The point is, with an all-in culture, is they talk about legendary food, legendary service. And they don't call them employees, they call them roadies, which I love. And the culture was already so great about supporting each other. Kent came out immediately and said, we're not laying off anybody. We're not taking any government assistance. We're going to figure this out together. If you don't feel safe coming in, don't worry, we'll pay you when you feel safe, come in. And within 2 weeks, get this, within 2 weeks, they were up and running again and profitable.
Wow.
Extraordinary. Now, the evolution of that was people started to come back. They started to feel safe coming into the restaurants. They put up the plexiglass. They did all the things they needed to do. See, in an all-in culture, you figure it out, you solve the problems. And you talk about extraordinary. I mean, their stock went from like 80 to like 18 in 2 weeks. Went back up to 100 within 6 weeks. So you talk about, does an all-in culture make a difference if your people believe what they do matters and they make a difference? Because Kent said, look, we're not just serving food, we're feeding America. They figured out how to put a family pack together for $25 that would feed a family of 4. Now, you talk about engagement. You say, look, yeah, we want to stay open. We want to make money. We want to feed our neighbors and make it affordable. Took off. And now, even now, you go to Texas Roadhouse. They've got great takeaway if that's what you feel comfortable. And it's a party in a box when you go in there. So, yeah, you want to look for a great story. By the way, we wrote it all up in a book called Made from Scratch, The Improbable Success of Texas Roadhouse. And read it. It's a great manual, and nobody does it better.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. That's my favorite case study on the planet.
I can tell. I see the excitement and passion behind that. So with that being said then, what advice do you give any aspiring entrepreneurs or even current small business owners?
Yeah, be careful with your hires. Particularly small business, you don't have a lot of redundancy. Make sure that you're asking really good questions. The questions I like are, where did you come from? How did you get here? What would you like to accomplish while you're here? And where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? Because I think if you know people's stories, it fills in a lot of gaps. Like you look at a resume and you go, yeah, checks all the boxes. Got the right education, got the right experience. Is it the right mindset? Are you going to be able to emotionally engage them in your work? Because when you get that emotional connection, it solves a lot of problems. People show up, they stay a little longer. They invite their friends. They recommend, they'll bring their friends in to work with you. So be careful in the hire, and then make sure that you really have a crystal clear picture of who it is and what you're trying to accomplish. Here's our vision. Here's our mission and our vision. I again, back to our friends at Texas Roadhouse, legendary food, legendary service. That's it. Years ago, some MBAs came in to talk to Kent Taylor and said, you've got to rewrite your mission vision. You got to have like diversity and inclusion and the environment and all this kind of stuff. And he said, look, sounds great. You got to get it down to 4 words, and 2 of those words have to be legendary. Have at it. Right? Now, you can ask anybody that works at Texas Roadhouse, what's important? They'll say legendary food, legendary service. Easy. And we make it fun and engaging, and we work hard, and we get great results, and we create memories. Because you never know when the first date is going to lead to somebody getting married and expecting their 3rd child. I mean, I'm just saying.
Great advice. Guess where I'm going for dinner tonight?
Texas Roadhouse. Tell him the Carrot Man sent you.
I will. Chester Elton, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Very informative. Best-selling author, executive coach, and keynote speaker. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Call me anytime. This was a delight.
Yes, absolutely. And thank all of you for watching the Small Business Show exclusively on ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire Stick, and Apple TV.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Shyann Malone, exclusively on ASBN.com.